Sophie Chen's hand smelled like grease and desperation. She'd been on her feet for 11 hours straight. The morning shift at Rosie's diner had bled into an afternoon catering jig, which was now bleeding into this serving hors d'oeuvres at some corporate event at Lombardi's, one of Chicago's most exclusive Italian restaurants. Her lower back screamed with every step. Her shoes, held together with duct tape hidden under the leather, pinched her toes until they went numb. But Sophie smiled. She smiled at every guest who took a bacon-wrapped scallop from her tray. She smiled at the men in suits who looked through her like she was invisible. She smiled because smiling was free. And everything else in her life cost money she didn't have. "Miss, could you bring more champagne to table 7? The event coordinator snapped her fingers without looking at Sophie. The woman wore a headset and an expression that suggested she'd never worked a real day in her life. "Of course," Sophie said, her smile never faltering. The event was some kind of business dinner. 20 tables scattered throughout Lombardi's private dining room, each one dripping with wealth. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight. The smell of truffle and expensive wine hung thick in the air. Sophie had calculated that a single plate here cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She was refilling champagne glasses at table 7 when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong among the polite conversation and classical music. A desperate, frustrated wail that cut through the ambient noise like a knife. Sophie's head snapped toward the sound. In the far corner of the dining room, partially hidden by a decorative screen, she saw them. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, sat in a chair with her hands pressed over her ears. Her whole body was rigid, her face contorted in distress. She was making that sound, not crying exactly, but something deeper, more primal, the sound of someone completely overwhelmed. Beside her stood a woman in a designer dress, looking exasperated. "Aria, stop it. People are staring. You need to behave." The little girl Aria didn't respond. She rocked back and forth, the sound growing louder. Sophie watched as the woman grabbed Aria's arm, trying to force her hands away from her ears. "I said stop. You're embarrassing your father. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." The little girl's distress escalated. She tried to pull away, her legs kicking, her voice reaching a pitch that made other diners turn and whisper. Sophie should have looked away, should have minded her own business. She had 6 more hours of work ahead of her, and getting involved in a stranger's family drama was the last thing she needed. But she couldn't stop staring at that little girl's face, at the genuine terror in her eyes, at the way her small body trembled with sensory overload that no one else seemed to recognize. Sophie's grandmother had worked with special needs children for 30 years before dementia stole her memories. Growing up, Sophie had watched her grandmother navigate meltdowns with patience and understanding. She'd learned to recognize the signs this wasn't a tantrum. This was a child whose nervous system was under attack. The woman yanked Aria's arm harder. "You're going to sit here quietly, or so help me." Sophie moved before she could think better of it. She set down her tray, walked across the dining room, and knelt beside Aria's chair. The woman looked at her in shock. "Excuse me, what do you think you're, Sophie?" "I'm sorry," Sophie said quietly, ignoring the woman and focusing on Aria. The little girl's eyes were squeezed shut now, her hands still clamped over her ears. "Aria? My name is Sophie. I know everything is really loud and bright right now. I know it hurts." Aria's rocking slowed slightly, her eyes opened just a crack. "I'm going to help make it quieter, okay?" Sophie pulled off her own cardigan, thin and worn, but soft from years of washing. She gently draped it over Aria's head, creating a dark, muffled cocoon. "There. Is that a little better?" Aria's screaming stopped. She sat very still under the cardigan, her breathing rapid but quieting. "Who are you?" the woman demanded. "You can't just—" "The music," Sophie said, still focused on Aria. "And the lights. They're too much for her. She needs somewhere quiet and dim." "She needs to learn to behave in public," the woman snapped. "Mr. Moretti paid a fortune for this event, and his daughter is ruining it." Sophie finally looked up at the woman. "She's not ruining anything. She's having a sensory overload. It's not behavioral. It's neurological. She literally can't control it. And you would know this because I grew up around children with autism, and because anyone with eyes can see. She's not misbehaving. She's suffering. The woman's face flushed red. How dare you? Is there a problem here? The voice came from behind Sophie. It was quiet, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that made people stop talking and pay attention. Sophie turned and found herself looking up at a man who radiated power like heat from a furnace. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His suit probably cost more than Sophie's car, what was left of it anyway. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark, intelligent, and currently fixed on his daughter, with an expression that made Sophie's chest tighten. This was Aria's father. And he looked like a man watching his world fall apart. Mr. Moretti, the woman said quickly, her tone completely different now. I'm so sorry. Aria was having another episode, and this waitress she was helping, a different voice interrupted. A man in his 60s, distinguished looking, appeared beside Moretti. I saw the whole thing. This young woman actually knew what she was doing. Moretti's eyes shifted to Sophie. She was still kneeling on the floor, one hand hovering near Aria, who remained hidden under the cardigan. Stand up, Moretti said. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Sophie stood slowly, very aware that every eye in the dining room was on them now. Very aware that she'd just inserted herself into something that was none of her business. I apologize, Sophie said. I didn't mean to overstep. She needed help, and no one was. She trailed off, realizing how that sounded. Like she was criticizing these people. These wealthy, powerful people who could get her fired with a phone call. But Moretti didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. What did you do? He asked. I created a sensory barrier. The cardigan blocks some of the light and muffles the sound. It's not perfect, but it helps. Sophie glanced at Aria. She needs to leave this room. Somewhere quiet, dark, with fewer people. And she needs time to regulate her nervous system. Forcing her to behave will only make it worse. The woman Moretti's companion, Sophie assumed, made an indignant sound. Alessandro, you're not actually listening to a waitress. Be quiet, Vanessa. Moretti's voice was soft, but Vanessa's mouth snapped shut like she'd been slapped. He moved closer to his daughter, crouching down to her level. Aria, can you hear me, baby? A tiny hand emerged from under the cardigan, reaching for him. Moretti took his daughter's hand, his expression cracking with naked relief. I'm here. Papa's here. He looked up at Sophie. Show me where to take her. Sophie blinked. I'm sorry? You said she needs somewhere quiet and dark. Show me. Mr. Moretti? The event coordinator appeared, headset still attached, stress radiating from her. The presentation is about to start. Your speech, cancel it, Moretti said, already lifting Aria into his arms, cardigan and all. Or have Marco do it. I don't care. He turned back to Sophie. Show me. Now. Sophie's mind raced. She'd been in Lombardi's kitchen earlier. There was a storage room in the back, away from the noise. Follow me. She led them through the dining room, past staring guests, past whispering staff members, past Vanessa, who looked like she wanted to murder someone, preferably Sophie. The storage room was exactly as Sophie remembered. Small, windowless, lined with shelves of linens and supplies. A single dim bulb provided minimal light. This will work, Moretti said, stepping inside. He sat on the floor, this man in his $1,000 suit, and settled Aria in his lap. He carefully removed Sophie's cardigan from Aria's head. The little girl blinked in the dim light, her face blotchy and tear-stained, but calmer. Better? Moretti asked softly. Aria nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She looked past her father, directly at Sophie standing in the doorway, and reached out her hand. Sophie's heart clenched. She wants you, Moretti said, surprise evident in his voice. I should go, Sophie said. I'll get fired if... Come here. It wasn't a request. Sophie stepped into the storage room and knelt beside them. Aria's hand found hers immediately, gripping tight. What's your name? Moretti asked. Sophie Chen. Sophie. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. You knew what to do. The doctors, the therapists, they've all told me different things. Try this method, try that approach. Nothing works, but you walked over and helped her in 30 seconds. My grandmother worked with special needs children, Sophie explained. I grew up watching her. Kids with autism aren't broken. They just experience the world differently. Aria wasn't misbehaving. She was drowning in sensory input. She needed an escape, not discipline. Moretti's jaw tightened. Daughter then back at Sophie. Vanessa is my late wife's sister. She's been helping with Aria since my wife died 2 years ago. I'm sorry, Sophie said quietly. Vanessa means well, but she doesn't understand. No one understands. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd run out of options. Aria hasn't spoken since her mother died. The doctors say it's selective mutism compounded by her autism. She barely eats. She has meltdowns like this several times a day. I've hired specialists, tried every therapy. Nothing helps. Aria leaned her head against Sophie's arm, her grip on Sophie's hand loosening to something more comfortable. She trusts you, Moretti said, and there was wonder in his voice. She doesn't trust anyone. Sophie looked down at this little girl, so small and fragile, carrying trauma no child should have to bear. Sometimes kids with autism connect with people in unexpected ways. It's not about credentials or methods. It's about whether someone feels near people, safe. You made her feel safe in 30 seconds. Moretti's dark eyes held Sophie's. How? I didn't force her to be different. I met her where she was. They sat in silence for several minutes. Gradually, Aria's breathing evened out. Her body relaxed. She wasn't happy, but she wasn't drowning anymore either. Then Aria did something that made both adults freeze. She pulled Sophie's hand toward her face and pressed it against her cheek. A gesture of comfort, of connection, of trust. Moretti's expression transformed. Sophie saw the exact moment his decision was made. I need to hire you, he said. Sophie laughed before she could stop herself. Mr. Moretti, I'm a waitress. I'm not qualified to. You're the only person who's helped my daughter in 2 years. That's the only qualification I need. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is my office number. Call me tomorrow. I can't. Name your price. Sophie stared at him. You don't understand. I work 3 jobs. I have a grandmother with dementia who needs round-the-clock care. I can't just 50,000 a month. Moretti's voice was flat, stating a fact. Plus health insurance for you and your grandmother. Plus housing if you need it. The number hit Sophie like a physical blow. 50,000 a month. That was more than she made in a year. That was her grandmother's medical bills paid. That was security. That was everything. Why? Sophie whispered. Because my daughter is my entire world, and she's slipping away from me. Because I've tried everything else. Because 30 seconds ago, she pressed your hand to her face, and she hasn't willingly touched another human being besides me in 8 months. Moretti's voice cracked slightly. Because I'm desperate, and you're the first sign of hope I've seen. Sophie looked down at Aria, who was now leaning against her, eyes half closed, finally peaceful. 1 month, Sophie heard herself say. I'll try for 1 month. If it doesn't help, I walk away. 1 month, Moretti agreed, but they both knew it was a lie, because Aria was already gripping Sophie's hand again, holding on like she'd finally found something solid in a world that had betrayed her. And Sophie Chen, who'd walked into this evening expecting to serve appetizers and go home, realized her life had just changed forever. Sophie stood outside the Moretti estate at 7 in the morning, clutching a paper bag containing everything she owned that mattered. 3 changes of clothes. Her grandmother's recipe book. A photo of her parents. Her entire life fit in a grocery bag. The gates were wrought iron, 15 feet tall, with security cameras tracking her every movement. Beyond them stretched a driveway lined with maple trees, leading to a house that looked like it had been stolen from a European castle and dropped in the middle of Chicago's North Shore. Sophie had gone home last night, sat with her grandmother until the older woman fell asleep, and made the hardest decision of her life. The nursing home had agreed to keep her grandmother for the month Moretti had already paid them, somehow, in the 6 hours since their conversation. He'd also sent a car to pick Sophie up this morning. A black SUV with a driver who didn't speak and didn't smile. The gates opened silently. Sophie walked up the driveway, her worn sneakers crunching on pristine gravel. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 50s stood there, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing a crisp uniform. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Miss Chen, I'm Teresa, the head of household staff. Mr. Moretti is expecting you." The interior of the house was exactly what Sophie expected, and nothing like she'd imagined. Yes, there was wealth marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably belonged in museums. But there was also something else. Emptiness. The kind of hollow feeling that came from a house that had forgotten how to be a home. Teresa led her through hallways that echoed with their footsteps. Mr. Moretti's office is on the second floor. Miss Aria's rooms are in the east wing. The kitchen staff begins at 6. Dinner is served at 7. You'll have Sundays off unless Mr. Moretti requires otherwise. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to, Mr. Everbores. Moretti will explain. Teresa's voice was kind, but firm. She stopped outside a heavy wooden door. He's been waiting since 5. She knocked twice and left. "Come in," Moretti's voice called. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that probably required a team of gardeners. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A desk that could double as a dining table dominated the center. Moretti stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He wore a suit again, navy this time, and looked like he hadn't slept. "I don't care what the city council wants," he was saying. "The permits will be approved, or they'll find." To themselves, explaining their Swiss bank accounts to the Tribune. "Yes, make it happen." He ended the call and turned to Sophie. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the waitress and the mob boss, the woman with nothing and the man with everything except what mattered most. "You came," Moretti said. "You paid my grandmother's nursing home for 3 months. In advance." Sophie set down her paper bag. Kind of hard to say no after that. That wasn't meant as leverage, that was a courtesy. He gestured to a leather chair. "Sit, please." Sophie sat, feeling very small in the enormous office. Moretti remained standing, hands in his pockets. "I need to be clear about what this arrangement is. You're not a nanny. You're not a therapist. You're not staff. Then what am I? You're the person my daughter trusts. Everything else is negotiable." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "This is your contract. Employment terms, salary, benefits. My lawyers drew it up last. In night." Sophie opened the folder. The numbers made her dizzy. 50,000 a month. Health insurance with no deductible. Housing provided. A clause about confidentiality that came with serious legal consequences for violations. "Mr. Moretti." "Alessandro," he interrupted. "Or Sandro. Mr. Moretti is what people call me when they're afraid." "Are you saying I shouldn't be afraid?" His lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. "I'm saying you're one of 3 people in this world I trust completely. The other 2 are my daughter and my head of security. So no, Sophie, you don't need to be afraid of me." Sophie studied him. In the daylight, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the gray at his temples, the way his shoulders carried weight that had nothing to do with muscle. "What happened to Aria's mother?" Sophie asked quietly. Alessandro's expression shuddered. "Car accident. 2 years ago. Aria was in the car with her." Sophie's chest constricted. "Oh God." She was 4, 10 years old. She watched her mother die, the trauma combined with her existing autism. He stopped, jaw clenching. "She hasn't been the same since. The specialists say she's locked inside herself, that the selective mutism might be permanent. But she spoke last night," Sophie said. "She said my name. First word in 8 months." Alessandro's voice was rough. "Do you understand what that means? What you did?" "I didn't do anything special. You made her feel safe. That's everything." He moved to sit on the edge of his desk, closer to Sophie now. "I need you to understand what you're walking into. My world is complicated, dangerous. I have enemies who would use Aria to hurt me. I have business dealings that don't always stay within legal boundaries. And I have a household full of people who will resent you for gaining access that they don't have. Like Vanessa," Sophie said. "Vanessa was my wife's sister. She's been helping with Aria since the accident. She means well, but she doesn't understand Aria's needs. And she definitely won't be happy about you. Should I be worried? You should be aware. Alessandro pulled out his phone and typed something. I'm assigning you a security detail. Marco will be your primary. He goes where you go, especially if you leave the estate with Aria. A security detail? For a waitress? For the person who has access to my daughter. His dark eyes held hers. You're valuable now, Sophie. That makes you a target. The weight of that statement settled over her like a blanket. She'd walked into something so much bigger than she'd understood. Can I see her? Sophie asked. Aria? Alessandro stood. Follow me. They walked through the mansion. Past staff who stopped and stared. Past rooms that probably had names Sophie didn't know. Alessandro moved with the confidence of someone who owned not just the house, but everything in it. The east wing was quieter. The walls here were painted soft colors, lavender and a cream. The carpet was thick enough to muffle footsteps. Alessandro stopped outside a door decorated with butterfly stickers. She hasn't slept well since the accident, he said quietly. Night terrors. Panic attacks. Sometimes she screams for hours and I can't. He stopped, composing himself. The doctors prescribed medication, but I hate giving it to her. She's 6 years old. She shouldn't need pills to sleep. He opened the door carefully. Aria's bedroom was beautiful. A canopy bed with gauzy curtains. Shelves full of toys that looked untouched. A reading nook with pillows and soft lighting. Everything a child could want. And in the middle of the floor, Aria sat surrounded by wooden blocks, organizing them by color and size with intense focus. Aria, Alessandro said softly. Someone's here to see you. The little girl's head snapped up. When she saw Sophie, her entire face transformed. She dropped the blocks and ran across the room, slamming into Sophie's legs, with enough force to make her stumble. Sophie caught her, kneeling down so they were eye level. Hi, sweetheart. Remember me? Aria nodded frantically. Her small hands reached up and touched Sophie's face, her hair, her shoulders, like she was making sure Sophie was real. I'm going to be spending time with you, Sophie said gently. Is that okay? Another nod. Then Aria did something that made Alessandro's breath catch audibly. She smiled. A real, genuine smile that lit up her whole face. When was the last time? Sophie started to ask, then stopped because she saw Alessandro's expression. He was staring at his daughter like he was seeing a miracle. 14 months, he said hoarsely. She hasn't smiled in 14 months. Aria tugged on Sophie's hand, pulling her toward the blocks. She wants you to play with her, Alessandro translated. Sophie looked up at him. Is that part of my job? Your job is whatever helps her. He backed toward the door. I have meetings. Marco will be outside if you need anything. There's a panic button by the bed if there's an emergency. Wait, Sophie said. What if I do something wrong? What if I mess this up? Alessandro paused in the doorway. Sophie, in the last 12 hours, you've made my daughter speak, trust another human being, and smile. I don't think you're capable of messing this up. Then he was gone, leaving Sophie alone with a little girl, who was handing her blocks with careful precision. Sophie sat on the floor. Aria immediately climbed into her lap, arranging blocks on Sophie's outstretched legs. What are we building? Sophie asked. Aria didn't answer with words. She just kept stacking, her small face serious with concentration. They sat like that for an hour, building towers, knocking them down, building again. And slowly, Sophie felt Aria relax against her, the rigid tension in the little girl's body gradually melting away. You're safe, here, Sophie whispered, stroking Aria's dark hair. I promise, you're safe. Aria looked up at her. Her lips moved, forming words that didn't quite come out. Sophie waited, patient, not pushing. Then, so quietly Sophie almost missed it. Stay? Sophie's eyes burned with tears. Yeah, baby. I'll stay. The first week was harder than Sophie expected. Vanessa appeared on the second day, dressed in designer clothes, and wearing an expression that could freeze water. She found Sophie and Aria in the garden, watching butterflies land on lavender bushes. So you're the miracle worker, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Sophie stood, placing herself between Vanessa and Aria. I'm Sophie. I know who you are. Alessandro told me he hired you, a waitress, to care for his daughter. Vanessa's laugh was sharp. Do you have any idea how many qualified professionals have tried to help Aria? Therapists with decades of experience, specialists who've written books, and he replaces us all with someone who serves coffee for a living. I don't serve coffee, Sophie said calmly. I served appetizers. And I'm not replacing anyone. You're a gold digger who saw an opportunity. Sophie felt her temper flare, but kept her voice level. I'm someone who helped a child in distress. Everything else is between me and Alessandro. Alessandro? Vanessa's eyebrows rose. You call him Alessandro now. How cozy. Behind Sophie, Aria made a small, distressed sound. The tension was getting to her. Sophie turned, blocking Vanessa from Aria's view. It's okay, sweetheart. Want to go see if the kitchen has any apple slices? Aria nodded, gripping Sophie's hand. As they walked away, Vanessa called after them. This won't last. He'll realize his mistake, and you'll be back serving appetizers before you know it. Sophie didn't respond, but she felt Aria's hand tighten in hers, the little girl's steps quickening to get away from her aunt. That evening, Sophie found Alessandro in his office. He looked up from his computer, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. Problem? He asked. Vanessa paid us a visit today. Alessandro's jaw tightened. What did she say? That I'm a gold digger, that you'll realize your mistake. Sophie crossed her arms. She's not wrong about one thing, though. I don't have credentials. I don't have experience. I'm making this up as I go. And yet, Aria has smiled 6 times this week. She's eating without fights. She slept through the night twice. Alessandro stood, moving around his desk. Vanessa has credentials. She has experience. And in 2 years, she accomplished none of that. She's Aria's aunt. Doesn't she have rights? She has rights to visit, not to undermine you. His voice turned cold. I'll speak with her. Don't. Sophie started, then stopped. She'd been about to say don't make it worse, but she was realizing something. Alessandro Moretti wasn't the kind of man who made things worse. He was the kind of man who eliminated problems. Don't. What? He asked. Don't. Forget that she's grieving too. She lost her sister. Alessandro studied her for a long moment. You're defending the woman who called you a gold digger. I'm defending a woman who's watching her niece bond with a stranger. That has to hurt. Something shifted in Alessandro's expression. Respect, maybe. Or surprise that Sophie could have empathy for someone who'd been cruel to her. You're nothing like I expected, he said quietly. What did you expect? Someone who'd take the money and do the minimum. Someone who'd see Aria as a job. He moved closer. You see her as a person, as a child who needs more than just supervision. That's because she is. I know. Alessandro's voice dropped. But most people don't. They see her autism, her trauma, her problems. They don't see the little girl who loves butterflies and organizing blocks by color, who hums when she's happy, who touches people's faces when she trusts them. Sophie's throat tightened. You see all. I'm her father. I have to see it. He paused. But you saw it in 30 seconds. They stood in his office, the evening light casting long shadows across the floor. Sophie became very aware of how close they were standing, of how Alessandro was looking at her not like an employee, but like something else entirely. I should go check on Aria, Sophie said quickly. Make sure she's ready for bed. Sophie. Alessandro's voice stopped her at the door. Thank you. For defending Vanessa. For being kind when you didn't have to be. For everything. Sophie nodded and fled before her heart could do something stupid like flutter at the warmth in his voice. The breakthrough came on day 9. Sophie had established a routine with Aria. Mornings were for quiet activities, puzzles, coloring, organizing her collections of shells and rocks. Afternoons were for the garden, where Aria could watch insects and touch different textures of leaves. Evenings were for stories, though Aria never spoke during them. Until tonight. Sophie was reading from a picture book about a lost kitten finding its way home. Aria sat in her lap, following along with the pictures. And the kitten looked everywhere for its mama. Sophie read. It looked in the garden and in the park and by the big oak tree, but it couldn't find her. Aria's small hand touched the page, tracing the picture of the sad kitten. The kitten was very scared. Sophie continued. It thought maybe its mama didn't want it anymore. That maybe it had been bad. And that's why its mama left. Aria's breathing changed. Sophie felt the little girl's body go rigid. But you know what? Sophie said gently. The mama kitten hadn't left. She'd been looking for her baby too. And when they found each other, Mama's not coming back. The words were so quiet, so broken, that Sophie almost missed them. She set down the book. Aria, the little girl turned in Sophie's lap, her dark eyes swimming with tears. Mama's not coming back. She's in the stars, Papa said. In the stars forever. Sophie's heart shattered. Oh, sweetheart. I was bad. I made her go away. Aria's voice cracked. The car was loud and I was crying and Mama looked at me and then, no. Sophie pulled Aria close, holding her tight. No, baby, it wasn't your fault. Do you hear me? What happened to your mama wasn't because you cried. It was an accident. A terrible, awful accident. But it wasn't your fault. Aria sobbed into Sophie's shoulder, her small body shaking with 2 years of grief that she'd been holding inside. I miss her. Aria whispered. I miss her so much. I know you do. Everyone says I should talk. But if I talk, if I be normal, then Mama really is gone. Because Mama knew me when I was different, when I was me. Sophie's throat burned with unshed tears. Aria, listen to me. Your Mama loved you exactly as you are. And talking doesn't mean you're forgetting her. It means you're letting other people know the amazing person she already knew. You promise? I promise. Aria cried for a long time. Sophie held her through all of it, rocking slowly, humming the same lullaby she'd hummed in Lombardi's storage room. Eventually, Aria's sobs quieted. Her breathing evened out. Sophie? She whispered. Yeah, baby. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here too. A sound from the doorway made Sophie look up. Alessandro stood there, his hand covering his mouth, his eyes red. He'd heard everything. Their eyes met across the room. Sophie saw the raw gratitude on his face, the pain of hearing his daughter's grief spoken aloud for the first time, the relief that finally Aria was letting it out. He mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Sophie nodded. Then she turned her attention back to Aria, who was falling asleep in her arms, exhausted from crying. Tell me about your mama, Sophie said softly. What was her favorite color? Purple, Aria murmured, half asleep, like butterflies. That's beautiful. What else? She smelled like flowers, and she sang songs in Italian. Papa's songs. She sounds wonderful. She was. Aria's eyes closed fully. Sophie? Yeah? Can you sing the Italian songs? Can Papa teach you? Sophie looked at Alessandro, who was now sitting on the floor by the doorway, listening with an expression of such profound love and pain that Sophie had to look away. Yeah, sweetheart, Sophie said. Papa can teach me. As Aria drifted into sleep, Sophie gently transferred her to the bed, tucking her under the butterfly-patterned comforter. Alessandro stood, moving to his daughter's bedside. He brushed Aria's hair back from her face with infinite gentleness. She spoke, he whispered. Really spoke. About her mother, about her feelings, about— His voice broke. She needed permission to grieve. Sophie said quietly. She's been holding it in for so long because she thought talking meant betraying her mother's memory. How did you know that? Because I did the same thing when my parents died. I was 12. I stopped talking for 6 months because I thought, if I stayed silent, time would stop, and they'd come back. Alessandro's eyes met hers. What changed? My grandmother. She told me that my parents lived on in my voice, that every time I spoke, I was honoring them, not forgetting them. Sophie smiled sadly. Aria needs to know that speaking doesn't mean her mother is more gone. It means her mother's love lives on through her. Alessandro reached out, his hand hovering near Sophie's face like he wanted to touch her but didn't dare. You're saving her, he said, his voice raw. You're saving my little girl. No, Sophie said. I'm just holding her hand while she saves herself. Alessandro's hand dropped, but the way he was looking at her like she was something precious, something miraculous, made Sophie's heart do dangerous things in her chest. The Italian songs, Alessandro said. I'll teach you tomorrow. If you want. Something passed between them in that moment. An understanding, a connection. The beginning of something neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Alessandro left, and Sophie sat beside Aria's bed, watching the little girl sleep peacefully for the first time since they'd met. Outside the window, Chicago's skyline glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in that city, Sophie's old life continued without her. The diner, the catering gigs, the apartment she'd shared with her grandmother. But sitting here, in a mansion that felt less empty now, watching a little girl breathe easy because she finally felt safe, Sophie realized something. She wasn't going back to that life. Not in a month. Maybe not ever. Because Aria needed her. And maybe, just maybe, Sophie needed Aria too. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The music. Lessons began the next day. Alessandro appeared in Aria's playroom mid-morning, holding a guitar that looked worn and well-loved. "My wife's," he said simply, seeing Sophie's curious look. Maria played. She sang to Aria every night. Aria's eyes widened when she saw the guitar. She made a small sound, not quite words, but close. "I'm not as good as your mama was," Alessandro said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "But I remember the songs." He started to play. The melody was soft and haunting, something old and Italian that carried the weight of generations. Then he sang, his voice rough but true. "Stella stellina, la notte si avvicina." Aria moved closer, drawn like a magnet. She climbed into her father's lap, her head resting against his chest as he played. Sophie watched them, her heart in her throat. This was what Aria needed. Not just Sophie. Not just therapy or routines or sensory-friendly spaces. She needed her father, present, vulnerable, sharing the grief instead of hiding from it. Alessandro's eyes met Sophie's over Aria's head. "Help me," they said. "I don't know how to do this without falling apart." Sophie knelt beside them. "Teach me the words," she said, "so I can sing with you." Alessandro's fingers paused on the strings. Then he nodded. They spent the afternoon like that. Alessandro playing. Sophie learning Italian lullabies phonetically, stumbling over pronunciations that made Aria giggle actual jiggles at Sophie's mistakes. "It's cute, dear," Alessandro said, smiling slightly. "Not chew dairy. You're telling her to close her eyes, not eat berries." "Italian is hard," Sophie protested. "Italian is beautiful," Alessandro corrected. "You just need practice." Their faces were close as he showed her the words written in his wife's handwriting in a notebook. Sophie could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. Could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Like this," Alessandro said, and sang the line again. Sophie tried to focus on the words. On the music. On anything except the way his voice wrapped around the Italian syllables like silk. On anything except the fact that she was very aware of him as a man, not just her employer. "Better," Alessandro said. "Now together," they sang. Alessandro's voice deep and rich, Sophie's lighter and uncertain. And in between them, Aria hummed along, her small voice joining theirs for the first time in 2 years. When the song ended, Aria looked up at her father. "Mama loved that song." "She did," Alessandro agreed, his voice thick. "She loved you too." "I loved her very much." Aria touched her father's face. "You're sad." "Sometimes," Alessandro admitted. "Are you sad too?" Aria nodded. "But Sophie makes it hurt less." Alessandro looked at Sophie, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Gratitude, yes. But something else too. Something that made her feel warm and terrified all at once. "Sophie makes a lot of things hurt less," Alessandro said, quietly. That evening, Sophie was in the library, a room she'd discovered on day 3, and immediately fallen in love with. Floor-to-ceiling books, leather chairs, a fireplace that actually worked. It was the kind of room that existed in movies, not real life. She was curled in a chair, reading, when Alessandro found her. "Aria's asleep," he said from the doorway. "Went down without a fight. No nightmares so far." "That's 3 nights in a row," Sophie said, marking her place in the book. "Because of you." Alessandro moved into the room, poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Whiskey. I don't drink. Smart. He took a sip, then sat in the chair across from her. For a moment they just looked at each other. Can I ask you something? Sophie said. Anything. What do you do? For work, I mean. I know you have to business interests. But what does that mean? Alessandro swirled his whiskey. Are you sure you want to know? I'm living in your house, caring for your now daughter. I think I should know. He was quiet for a long moment. My family has been in Chicago for 4 generations. We started in construction, legitimate work. Then my grandfather expanded into other areas. Some legal, some less legal. By the time my father took over, we were involved in everything from real estate development to labor unions to certain activities the police frown upon. Mafia, Sophie said quietly. We prefer family business. His smile was humorless. But yes, my world is complicated, Sophie. Dangerous. I've spent the last 10 years trying to clean up the operations. Go legitimate. But some connections can't be severed. Some debts can't be erased. Is Aria in danger? Always. Alessandro's honesty was brutal. That's why the security, the guards, the protocols. I have enemies who would love nothing more than to hurt me by hurting my daughter. Sophie felt cold. Should I be afraid? Yes. Alessandro leaned forward. But I won't let anything happen to Aria. I have 5 men, whose only job is keeping this estate secure. Cameras everywhere. Protocols for every scenario. You're safer here than you've ever been in your life. That's not very reassuring. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be honest. Alessandro set down his glass. You have a right to know what you walked into, and you have a right to leave if it's too much. Sophie thought about the past 9 days, about Aria's smile, her laughter, her slowly healing heart. I'm not leaving, Sophie said. Even knowing the danger? Even knowing. Alessandro studied her face. Why? Because that little girl upstairs needs me. And because... Sophie stopped, surprised by what she was about to say. Because I need her too. My whole life has been about surviving, working jobs I hated, taking care of my grandmother, never having time to just be. But here, with Aria, I feel like I'm doing something that matters, something real. You matter, Alessandro said, quietly. Do you understand that? Not just what you do for Aria. You, Sophie Chen. You matter. The intensity in his voice made Sophie's cheeks flush. I should go to bed. Early morning tomorrow. She stood quickly, but Alessandro stood too, blocking her path. Wait, he said. They were close now. Too close. Sophie could see the stubble on his jaw, the tired lines around his eyes, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. Thank you, Alessandro said, for staying, for caring about my daughter, for making this house feel less empty. Alessandro, I know this is inappropriate. You're an employee. I'm your boss. But I need you to know. He stopped, jaw clenching like he was fighting himself. Know what? Sophie whispered. That you're extraordinary. That I haven't felt this grateful, this hopeful, this alive in 2 years. And it scares me, because I buried my heart with my wife. I wasn't supposed to feel anything again. And then you walked into that restaurant and everything changed. Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs. Alessandro, we can't. I know, he said again. I know we can't, but I needed to say it, just once, so you'd know. He stepped aside, letting her pass. Sophie walked to the door on shaking legs. Then she stopped. For what it's worth, she said without turning around. You make me feel seen too, like I'm more than just a waitress, more than just someone surviving. She left before he could respond. In her room, Sophie pressed her back against the door and tried to steady her breathing. This was bad. This was so bad. She was falling for her employer, a mob boss. A man with a dead wife and a dangerous life and enemies who would kill her without hesitation. She was falling for Alessandro Moretti, and there was no stopping it. The threat arrived on day 12. Sophie was in the garden with Aria, watching the little girl chase butterflies, when Marco, her security detail, suddenly pressed his hand to his earpiece. "Code red," he said. "Miss Chen, I need you and Aria inside now." "What's happening?" "Inside, now." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. His tone left no room for argument. Sophie scooped up Aria, who protested losing sight of a particularly beautiful monarch butterfly. "We'll come back later, baby. Promise." Marco led them through a side entrance Sophie hadn't used before. Guards appeared from nowhere, forming a protective circle. Their hands rested on concealed weapons. Alessandro met them in the hallway, his face carved from stone. "Take them to the safe room," he ordered Marco. "What's going on?" Sophie demanded. "Not here." Alessandro looked at Aria, forced his expression to soften. "Princess, you and Sophie are going to play a game, okay? Like hide and seek. Marco's going to take you somewhere special." "I don't like this game," Aria said, her arms tight around Sophie's neck. "I know, baby. But we need to play anyway. Just for a little while." The safe room was in the basement, reinforced walls, security monitors, supplies for days. Marco showed them inside, and Sophie felt the hydraulic door seal behind them with a sound like a tomb closing. On the monitors, she could see guards taking positions throughout the estate. Alessandro was in his office, on the phone, his expression dark and dangerous. "What's happening?" Sophie asked Marco. The security guard hesitated. "There was a threat. Against Miss Aria. And against you." Sophie's blood ran cold. "Against me? The rival family found out about you. They know Aria's attached to you. They know Mr. Moretti." He stopped. "Knows what?" Marco met her eyes. "They know he cares about you. That makes you a target." Sophie sank into a chair, pulling Aria into her lap. The little girl was shaking, picking up on the fear in the room. "It's okay," Sophie whispered, "even though we're safe here." They stayed in that room for 3 hours. Sophie played games with Aria, sang songs, told stories. Anything to keep the little girl from panicking. But inside, Sophie's mind raced. Someone wanted to hurt her, kill her probably. Because she'd gotten too close to Alessandro's daughter. Because Alessandro had let her get too close to his daughter. Because he cared about her. On the monitors, Sophie watched men arrive at the estate. Dangerous-looking men in dark suits. They spoke with Alessandro in his office. Then they left, and Alessandro's face was harder than Sophie had ever seen it. Finally, Marco's earpiece crackled. "All clear. Threat neutralized." "What does that mean?" Sophie asked. "It means you're safe. For now." They emerged from the safe room to find Alessandro waiting. Aria ran to him, and he swept her into his arms, holding her so tight the little girl squeaked. "I'm okay, Papa," Aria said. "Sophie kept me safe." Alessandro's eyes met Sophie's, over his daughter's head. "I need to speak with Sophie alone. Can you go with Teresa for a snack?" After Aria left reluctantly, Alessandro turned to Sophie. His jaw was clenched so hard she could see the muscle twitching. "This is my fault," he said. "I let you get too close. I let my daughter get attached. I let myself—" He stopped, shaking his head. "The Costas family. They're the biggest rival family in Chicago. They've been circling for years, looking for weakness, and I just handed them one." "Me," Sophie said flatly. "You and Aria both. They sent a message. Said they know Aria is healing. Said they know it's because of you. Said they'll take you both if I don't back off their territory." Sophie felt dizzy. "So what happens now?" "Now?" Alessandro's smile was cold and terrible. "Now I make sure they understand that threats against my family have consequences. Alessandro, you're family now, Sophie. Whether you like it or not, you're under my protection, and anyone who threatens you threatens me." His voice dropped to something lethal. "And I don't respond well to threats." Sophie saw it then. Not the tired father, not the grieving widower, but the mob boss. The man who'd built an empire on fear and blood. The man who would burn the city down to protect what was his. And Sophie realized something terrifying. She was his now, in his mind, in his world, in every way that mattered. There was no walking away. Not anymore. The war started quietly. Sophie didn't see it at first. Alessandro kept her and Aria insulated from the violence, locked safely inside the estate, while he dealt with the Costas family. But she noticed the changes. More guards, heavier weapons. Alessandro coming home at dawn with blood on his clothes that wasn't his own. "Don't ask," he'd say when she looked at him with questions in her eyes. "Please, Sophie, don't ask." So she didn't. She focused on Aria, who was thriving despite the tension. The little girl spoke in full sentences. Now. She laughed. She played. She'd even started asking about going to school, maybe making friends. But every time Sophie tucked her in at night, she saw guards patrolling outside the window, saw the fear beneath Alessandro's carefully controlled exterior, felt the weight of being someone worth killing. 2 weeks after the threat, Sophie found Alessandro in his office at midnight. He sat in darkness, staring at nothing, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. "You should be sleeping," he said without turning. "So should you." Sophie closed the door behind her. "When's the last time you slept?" "Don't remember." She moved closer, and in the moonlight streaming through the windows, she saw his face. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. "Alessandro, you can't keep doing this. You're going to collapse." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're barely holding it together." Sophie knelt beside his chair, forcing him to look at her. "Talk to me, please." For a long moment, he said. "Nothing." Then, "I killed 4 men last night." Sophie's breath caught. They were Costas soldiers. They were planning to hit the estate. "To take you and Aria, so I killed them." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I shot them in an abandoned warehouse, and I felt nothing. No remorse, no guilt, just satisfaction that they couldn't hurt you." "Alessandro, what am I becoming, Sophie? What kind of man feels nothing when he takes a life?" His eyes finally met hers, and she saw the anguish there. "My wife wanted me to leave this life. She begged me, said the violence would destroy me, and I promised her I'd try. I promised I'd be better. But here I am, covered in blood, protecting what's mine the only way I know how." Sophie reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "You're protecting your daughter. You're protecting me. That doesn't make you a monster, doesn't it? I've killed more men in the past 2 weeks than I can count. I've tortured people for information. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details." His voice cracked. "And the worst part is, I'd do it all again. Because when I close my eyes, all I see is Aria's face. And yours. And I know I'd burn the whole world down before I'd let anyone hurt either of you." "Then burn it," Sophie whispered. "If that's what it takes to keep Aria safe, burn it all down. I won't judge you. I won't leave. I'm here, Alessandro. I'm right here." Something broke in his expression. He pulled her up, into his lap, his arms wrapping around her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "I can't love you," he said against her hair. "It's too dangerous. You're already a target. If they knew how much you actually mean to me." "How much do I mean to you?" Sophie pulled back to see his face. Alessandro's dark eyes were raw with emotion. "Everything. You mean everything. You and Aria. You're the only good things in my life. The only reasons I'm still trying to be more than what my father was. Then, don't push me away. Let me help. Let me be here for you. Sophie, I'm a killer. I'm a criminal. I'm everything you should run from. You're also a father who sings Italian lullabies to his daughter. A man who cried when she smiled for the first time in a year. Someone who's trying desperately to be better than his past." Sophie touched his face. "I see all of you, Alessandro. The dark and the light. And I'm not running. You should, but I won't." They stared at each other in the moonlit office. Then Alessandro kissed her. It was desperate and tender and fierce all at once, like drowning and breathing at the same time. Sophie kissed him back, pouring 2 weeks of fear and longing and impossible feelings into that connection. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro pressed his forehead to hers. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "Probably. It puts you in more danger. I know. If anything happens to you because of me, it won't." Sophie silenced him with another kiss. "We're going to be okay. All 3 of us. We're going to survive this." Alessandro held her close. And for the first time in weeks, Sophie felt him relax. Just slightly, just enough. "Stay with me tonight," he said quietly. "Just stay." "I don't want to be alone." Sophie should have said no, should have gone back to her room, should have maintained the professional boundary that had already been shattered beyond repair. Instead, she stayed. They moved to the leather couch by the window. Alessandro lay down, pulling Sophie against his chest. They didn't talk, didn't do anything, except hold each other while the city lights flickered beyond the glass. And for a few stolen hours, the mob boss and the waitress pretended they were just two people who'd found each other in the darkness. The morning brought reality crashing back. Sophie woke to find Alessandro already up, on the phone, his voice cold and controlled again. The vulnerable man from last night had vanished behind. "I don't care what it costs. Find out who leaked our security protocols, and when you find them, bring them to me." He ended the call and turned to find Sophie watching him. "There's a leak. Someone inside the estate is feeding information to the Costas family." Sophie sat up, her blood running cold. "Inside? You mean someone who works here? Someone with access? Someone who knows the guard rotations, the security systems?" His jaw clenched. "Someone who's been in this house, around my daughter, around you." "Who? I don't know yet, but I will." Alessandro moved to his desk, pulling up security footage on his computer. "I'm having Marco investigate every staff member, their finances, their connections, their phone records. Someone will break." Sophie joined him, looking at the screens showing various angles of the estate. "What about Vanessa?" Alessandro's head snapped up. "What about her?" "She's been hostile since I arrived. She has access to everything. And she..." Sophie hesitated. "She's your late wife's sister. She knows everything about your family, your security, your routines. Vanessa has been with us for years. She loves Aria. Does she? Or does she resent that Aria is healing because of me instead of her?" Sophie hated saying it. Hated suspecting someone who was grieving her sister. But the pieces fit too well. Alessandro stared at the security footage, his expression darkening. "She was here yesterday. In the East Wing, near Aria's room. She told the guards she was checking on her niece. But Aria was with you in the garden at the time." Alessandro's voice went deadly quiet. "She was in Aria's room when no one else was there." He pulled up more footage, rewinding through the past week. There was Vanessa, coming and going at odd times, always with explanations that seemed reasonable, always with guard approval because she was family. "She's been photographing the security panel," Sophie said, pointing at one screen. "Look, she's..." holding her phone up like she's texting, but the angle she's taking pictures of the control panel. Alessandro watched, his face transforming into something terrible. "She's the leak. My wife's sister is the leak. Why would she..." "Money. Revenge. Maybe the Costas family promised her something." Alessandro's fist slammed onto the desk. "I trusted her. I let her near my daughter. I let her into my home." "Alessandro, we don't know for sure, don't we?" He turned to Sophie, eyes blazing. "She's had motive and opportunity. She's been acting strange since you arrived. And she has access to everything the Costas family would need to hit us." He grabbed his phone, made a call. "Marco, bring Vanessa to my office. Now. I don't care what she's doing. Bring her." 10 minutes later, Vanessa was escorted into the office by 2 large guards. She looked annoyed until she saw Alessandro's face. Then fear flickered across her expression. "Alessandro, what's this about?" "I was just..." "Sit down." His voice could have frozen hell. Vanessa sat, her eyes darting between Alessandro and Sophie. "What's going on?" Alessandro turned his computer monitor to face her. Played the footage of her photographing the security panel. Vanessa's face went white. "I can explain..." "Explain how you've been feeding information to the Costas family? Explain how you betrayed my family, endangered my daughter, put Sophie at risk?" Alessandro's voice was terrifyingly quiet. "Please, explain." "They came to me," Vanessa said, her voice shaking. 3 months ago. They said they could help me. They said they knew you were going legitimate, abandoning the family business. They said Chicago needed strong leadership, and you weren't providing it anymore, so you decided to help them destroy me. I decided to help them save this family." Vanessa's fear turned to anger. You've gone soft, Alessandro. Ever since Maria died, you've been weak. Trying to go legitimate, trying to be something year-round. And then she showed up. She glared at Sophie. And you got even worse, letting some nobody waitress take care of your daughter instead of family. Making decisions based on feelings instead of business. You're not the boss this family needs. Alessandro moved so fast. Sophie barely saw it. One moment he was behind his desk. The next, he had Vanessa by the throat, slamming her against the wall. You endangered my daughter, he snarled. You betrayed Maria's memory. You put Sophie in danger, and you did it all because you thought you knew better than me? Vanessa clawed at his hand, gasping. Alessandro, please. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now. One reason I shouldn't put a bullet in your head and leave your body in the river. I'm Maria's sister. I'm family. You stopped being family the moment you betrayed us. Alessandro's grip tightened. Vanessa's face was turning purple. Alessandro, stop. Sophie grabbed his arm. Stop. You're going to kill her. That's the point. In front of me? You're going to make me watch you kill someone? Sophie's voice cracked. Please, don't make me see that. Don't make that memory live in my head. Alessandro's eyes met hers. She saw the war raging inside him, the need for vengeance against the desire to be better than his violence. Slowly, his grip loosened. Vanessa collapsed to the floor, gasping. Get her out of my sight, Alessandro said to the guards. Lock her in the wine cellar until I decide what to do with her. As the guards dragged Vanessa away, she screamed, The Costas know everything, Alessandro. They know about your weapons shipments, your money laundering operations, your corrupt cops and judges. They're going to take everything from you. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. The door slammed shut, leaving Alessandro and Sophie alone. He stood with his back to her, his shoulders shaking. I almost killed her. Right in front of you. I almost. Sophie wrapped her arms around him from behind. But you didn't. You stopped. Because of you. Only because of you. He turned in her arms, pulling her close. What am I going to do, Sophie? The Costas know everything. They have all our security protocols, all our business information. They're going to attack, and I don't know if I can protect everyone. Then we leave. You, me, and Aria. We disappear. Start over somewhere they can't find us. You'd do that? Give up everything? For Aria? For you? Sophie looked up at him. In a heartbeat. Alessandro kissed her forehead. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. A knock on the door interrupted them. Marco entered, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. The Costas family just hit 3 of our warehouses. They're declaring open war. Alessandro's expression hardened. He gently set Sophie away from him, and she watched the transformation. The vulnerable man disappeared. The mob boss took his place. Call everyone in, all the capos, all the soldiers. If the Costas want war, we'll give them war. He turned to Sophie. Take Aria to the safe room. Don't come out until I come for you. Alessandro, please, Sophie. I need to know you're safe, both of you. I can't fight if I'm worried about you. Sophie wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but she saw the fear beneath his cold exterior, the desperate need to protect what he loved. Okay, she said, but you come back to us. Do you hear me? You come back. I will. I promise. Sophie left to get Aria, her heart in her throat. Behind her, she heard Alessandro giving orders, his voice cold and controlled. The war was here, and Sophie had no idea if any of them would survive it. The safe room had become a prison. Sophie and Aria had been locked inside for 6 hours. On the security monitors, Sophie watched the battle unfold. Costas soldiers attacking the estate, Alessandro's men fighting back. Gunfire. Explosions. Blood on the pristine grounds. Aria clung to Sophie, crying softly. Where's Papa? I want Papa. He's keeping us safe, baby. He'll come soon. But Sophie was terrified. She'd watched Alessandro on the monitors, moving through the chaos like a dark angel of death, protecting his home, his family, her. Then the power went out. The monitors went dark. The lights died. Even the emergency backup failed. Sophie? Aria's voice was tiny in the darkness. I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. Sophie pulled out her phone, using the dim light to find Aria in the darkness. Come here. A sound outside the safe room door. Footsteps. Heavy. Multiple people. Sophie's blood ran cold. The door was sealed. It would take specialized equipment to open it from the outside. Unless someone had the codes. Codes that Vanessa had given to the Costas family. The hydraulic seal hissed. The door began to open. Sophie grabbed Aria, pulling her behind a shelf. She found a fire extinguisher, gripped it like a weapon. If someone came through that door who wasn't Alessandro or his men, she'd fight. She'd die fighting if she had to. The door opened fully. A figure stepped through, backlit by emergency lighting from the hallway. Sophie? Aria? Alessandro's voice. Thank God, Alessandro's voice. We're here, Sophie called out. The lights from his phone found them. Alessandro was covered in blood, his shirt torn. A cut across his face. But he was alive. He was here. Aria launched herself at him, crying, Papa! Papa! You came back. Always, princess. Always. He held his daughter with one arm, reached for Sophie with the other. We need to leave. Now. The Costas breached the estate. My men are holding them, but barely. I have a car waiting. Where will we go? Anywhere that isn't here. Alessandro's eyes were dark with determination. I have resources, safe houses, money in accounts they don't know about. We'll disappear. The three of us. Start over. Sophie nodded. Okay, let's go. They ran through the mansion, Alessandro leading them through. Corridors Sophie had never seen. Secret passages built into the walls. Escape routes designed for exactly this scenario. Behind them, gunfire echoed, shouting, the sounds of Alessandro's empire crumbling. They burst through a hidden door into the garage. A black SUV waited, engine running. Marco was in the driver's seat. Boss, we need to move. They're breaking through the west entrance. Alessandro lifted Aria into the back seat, helped Sophie in beside her. Then he climbed in, nodding to Marco. Drive. The SUV roared forward. They crashed through the garage door, no time for it to open properly, and onto the estate grounds. Behind them the mansion burned. The Costas had set it on fire, destroying everything. Aria watched through the back window, tears streaming down her face. Our house. Papa. Our house is gone. Houses can be rebuilt, princess. What matters is we're together. They drove through Chicago at breakneck speed. Marco took turns so sharply, Sophie thought they might flip. But he was good. Former military, Alessandro had said once. The best driver in the organization. Where are we going? Sophie asked. The airport. I have a private plane. We'll be in Canada before dawn, then overseas. Somewhere they'll never find us. It sounded perfect. It sounded like safety. It sounded too easy. The explosion happened as they turned onto Lakeshore Drive. A car ahead of them detonated, sending flames and debris everywhere. Marco swerved, but they clipped another vehicle, sending the SUV into a spin. They crashed into a light pole. The airbags deployed. Aria screamed, Everyone out. Alessandro shouted, Now. Sophie's ears were ringing. Blood dripped from her forehead where she'd hit the window. But she grabbed Aria, stumbled out of the ruined SUV. Cars screeched to a stop around them. Doors opened. Men emerged, all armed. Costas soldiers. They were surrounded. A man stepped forward, older, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit despite the late hour. Alessandro Moretti. I've been waiting for this moment for 10 years. Vincent Costas, Alessandro said, positioning himself between the man and his family. If you wanted to talk, you could have called. Talk? Vincent laughed. I'm past talking. You've been a thorn in my side for too long, blocking my expansions, interfering with my operations. And then you had the audacity to try going legitimate, to abandon the life? He shook his head. You don't get to leave, Alessandro. Your family business, whether you like it or not, and the only way out is death. Then kill me, but let them go. They're innocent. Innocent? Vincent's eyes landed on Sophie. This is the woman who's been healing your daughter. The one you've fallen for. You think I don't know everything about you? I know what she means to you, which is why she dies too. No. Alessandro's voice was ice. You want me? Fine. Take me. But you leave them alone. I don't think so. Vincent raised his gun, pointing it at Sophie. I think I'll make you watch her die first. Then your daughter. Then you. In that order. So you feel exactly what I felt when your father killed my family. Everything happened at once. Alessandro lunged for Vincent. Marco appeared from behind the SUV, firing. Costa's soldiers returned fire. Chaos erupted in the street. Sophie dropped to the ground, covering Aria with her body. Bullets flew overhead. Someone screamed. Glass shattered. Then strong hands grabbed Sophie, yanking her up. Vincent had her, his gun pressed to her head. Stop, he roared. Everyone stop, or I kill her. The gunfire ceased. Alessandro stood frozen, his own weapon pointed at Vincent but unable to fire without hitting Sophie. Let her go, Alessandro said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Let her go, and I'll do whatever you want. What I want is to destroy you, Vincent said. And this is how I do it. By taking everything you love. His finger tightened on the trigger. Sophie closed her eyes, thinking of Aria, hoping the little girl would remember her, hoping Alessandro would find a way to keep their daughter safe. The gunshot cracked through the night, but Sophie felt no pain. She opened her eyes to find Vincent staring at her in shock. Blood bloomed across his chest. His grip loosened. He fell. Behind him stood Vanessa, holding a smoking gun. I'm a lot of things, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. A traitor, a coward, someone who made terrible choices, but I won't let him kill my niece, or the woman she loves. The Costas soldiers, seeing their leader dead, scattered. Some surrendered, others ran. It was over in seconds. Alessandro pulled Sophie into his arms, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Sophie, are you? I'm okay. I'm okay. Sophie looked at Vanessa, stunned. You saved me. Vanessa dropped the gun like it burned. I saved Aria. Everything I did, I thought I was protecting this family. But I was wrong. Alessandro was right. The violence, the war, it has to end. And it ends with him. She looked at Vincent's body. I betrayed you, Alessandro. I put your daughter at risk. But I couldn't. I couldn't let them kill her mother. I'm not her mother, Sophie said quietly. Yes, you are. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Maria would be grateful. She'd want Aria to have someone like you. Someone who loves her like you do. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Multiple units, responding to reports of gunfire. We need to go, Marco said. Boss the plane. No, Alessandro said. He looked at his daughter, then at Sophie, then at the destruction around them. No more running, no more wars. This ends tonight. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Agent Morrison? This is Alessandro Moretti. Yes, that Alessandro Moretti. I want to make a deal. 6 months later. The small house in suburban Chicago was nothing like the mansion. 3 bedrooms, a yard with a swing set, normal neighbors who waved good morning and borrowed cups of Televase. Sugar. Sophie stood in the kitchen, making breakfast, watching through the window as Aria played with the neighbor's daughter. Real friends, real childhood, real safety. Alessandro appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, kissing her neck. Good morning. Morning. Sophie leaned into him. Sleep okay? Better than I have in years. The deal Alessandro had made was simple. He'd testified against the remaining Costas family members and several corrupt officials in exchange for immunity. He'd turned over his entire criminal operation to federal authorities. He'd walked away from the family business completely. They'd lost everything. The mansion, the cars, the wealth. But they'd gained something more valuable. Freedom. Alessandro now worked as a consultant for legitimate construction companies. The pay was a fraction of what he'd made before, but it was honest work. Legal work, safe work. Sophie had gone back to school, studying early childhood education. She wanted to help other children like Aria, to give them the care and understanding they deserved. And Aria thrived. She attended a specialized school for children with autism. She had friends. She spoke in full sentences. She still had hard days. The trauma didn't just vanish, but she was healing. Really healing. Mommy? Aria called from the yard. The title still made Sophie's heart skip. Can Emma stay for lunch? Of course, baby. Alessandro kissed Sophie's temple. You know what today is? Wednesday? It's the 6-month anniversary of the night we met. The night you saved my daughter and changed my life. He turned Sophie to face him. I've been waiting for the right moment to do this. He knelt down, pulling a simple ring from his pocket. Not a massive diamond, just a beautiful, modest sapphire. Sophie Chen. You walked into my life when I was drowning. You saved my daughter. You saved me. You made me believe I could be more than my worst choices. Will you marry me? Will you officially be the mother Aria already thinks you are? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you? Sophie's eyes filled with tears. You're already worthy. You've always been worthy. And yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and through the window, they heard Aria cheering. Papa and Mommy are getting married, she announced to Emma. I'm going to have a real family. You already have a real family, Sophie called out. We've just been waiting to make it official. That evening, after Emma went home and Aria was tucked in bed, Sophie and Alessandro sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Do you miss it? Sophie asked quietly. The power, the wealth, the respect that came from fear. Alessandro was quiet for a moment. Then, every day, I wake up in a normal house, with a normal job, and a normal life. And you know what I feel? What? Grateful. He pulled her closer. I spent 40 years building an empire on blood and fear, and I'd trade every second of it for this. For you. For Aria's laughter. For the peace of knowing no one is trying to kill us. He kissed her forehead. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, Sophie. What's that? Hope. A future. A reason to be better. He smiled. That's worth more than any empire. Inside the house, Aria called out from her room. Mommy? Daddy? Can you sing the Italian song? They went inside together, climbing the stairs to their daughter's room. Aria lay in bed, clutching the stuffed butterfly Sophie had given her for her 7th birthday. Which song, princess? Alessandro asked. Mama's song. The one about the stars. Alessandro sat on one side of the bed. Sophie sat on the other. They held hands across Aria's small body and sang together in Italian, their voices blending in the melody that Maria had once sung. Stella stellina. La notte si avvicina. Aria's eyes drifted closed. A smile on her. Safe. Loved. Home. When the song ended, Alessandro and Sophie stayed there for a moment, watching her breathe peacefully. I was so lost, Alessandro whispered. And then you walked into that restaurant. You fed my daughter when everyone else ignored her. You saw her. Really saw her. And you showed me how to see her too. You would have figured it out eventually. No. His voice was firm. I wouldn't have. I was drowning in grief and guilt and violence. I would have lost her completely. But you threw me a lifeline. You reminded me what mattered. Sophie squeezed his hand. We saved each other. Yeah, Alessandro smiled. We did. They left Aria's room, closing the door softly behind them. In the hallway, Alessandro pulled Sophie close, holding her like she might disappear. I love you, he said. I love you so much it terrifies me. Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love. And I can't. I can't lose you. You won't. I'm not going anywhere. Sophie touched his face. We survived a mob war, Alessandro. We survived assassins and betrayal, and everything your old life threw at us. We can survive anything. Together, together. They kissed in the hallway of their modest house, with their daughter sleeping safely nearby, and the ghost of Alessandro's past finally laid to rest, the mob boss and the waitress, the broken man and the woman who'd helped him heal, the family that had been forged not through blood, but through choice and love and the courage to be better than their circumstances. Sophie Chen had walked into Lombardi's 6 months ago to serve appetizers at a corporate event. She'd expected a paycheck and a long shift. She'd found a family instead. And as Alessandro led her to their bedroom, his hand warm in hers, Sophie realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the ones that start with fairy tale romance. Sometimes they're the ones that start with a little girl who needed help, and 2 people, brave enough to fight for her. Sometimes they're the ones that begin with a simple act of kindness, feeding someone everyone else ignored, and end with a lifetime of love. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.